Welcome to the live discussion from Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. And we are going to begin the final chapter of Bhagavad Gita as it is today. Just to give a quick recap, chapter 17 was all about that whatever the affiliation or attachment one has with any mode of the nature, that is going to be reflected in a person's faith, that what kind of faith they follow. And chapter 18 is actually a summary of the Bhagavad Gita by Sri Krishna to Arjun and to all of us. And Krishna is going to offer the easiest path, which is the Bhakti Yoga, to all of us, now that he has explained the Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. So this is going to be the conclusion of this chapter. We're going to cover verses 1 to 10 today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurum Deenatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Om Tat Sat. Verse 1. Arjunuvacha Sannyasasya Mahabaho Tattvamichhami Veditum Tyagasya cha Rishikesha Prithakkeshi Nishudana. Arjun said, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, the Tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, which is sannyas, O killer of Keshi demon, master of the senses. Verse 2. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduh Sarva Karma Phalatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanah. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the giving up of activities that are based on material desire is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, that is the sannyas, and giving up the results of activities is what the wise call the renunciation or the tyaga. Verse 3. Tyajam dosha vadityeke karma prahur manishinaha yagya dana tapah karma na tyajyat miti chapare. Translation. Some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty, yet other sages maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity and penance should never be abandoned. Verse 4. Nishchayam shrinu me tatra tyage bharata sattama Tyago hi purusha vyagraha trividha samprakirtitah. O best of the Bharatas, now hear my judgment about renunciation. O tiger among men, renunciation is declared as the scriptures to be of three kinds. Is declared in the scriptures to be of three kinds. Verse 5. Yagya dana tapah karma natyajyam karyam tat Yagyo danam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam. Manishinam means even for the great souls. Translation. Acts of sacrifice, charity and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity and penance purify even the great souls. Verse 6. Etan yapi tu karmani sangam tyaktva phalani cha kartavyani ti me partha nishchitam matta muttamam. All these activities should be performed without attachment or any expectation of result. They should be performed as a matter of duty, O son of Pritha. That is my final opinion. Verse 7. Niyatasya tu sannyasah karmano no patatyate Moha tattasya parityagas tamasah parikirtitah. Prescribed duties should never be renounced. One If one gives up his prescribed duties because of illusion, such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Verse 8. Dukkham itya eva yat karma kaya klesha bhayat tyajet sakritva rajasam tyagam naiva tyaga phalam labhet. Anyone who gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort is said to have renounced in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to the elevation of renunciation. Verse 9. Karyam itya eva yat karma niyatam kriyate arjuna sangam tyaktva phalam chaiva syatyagaha satviko mataha. O Arjun, when one performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done and renounces all material association and all attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. Verse 10. Nadvaishtya kushalam karma kushalena anushajjate tyagi sattva samavishto medhavi chinna samshayah. The intelligent renouncer situated in the mood of goodness, neither hateful of inauspicious work nor attached to auspicious work, has no doubts about work. So now this chapter 18, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation is as told earlier, is the summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Verses 1 to 12 are going to cover the Karma Yoga, which we read earlier on in the Bhagavad Gita also. In the first verse, Bhagwan is being asked by Arjun, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, that is the tyag, and of the renounced order of life, sannyas. O killer of Kesh demon, master of the senses. So, Bhagavad Gita Prabhupada is telling us, and the purport actually finishes in the 17 chapters. The 18th chapter is the supplementary summarization of the topics discussed. So, every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan Krishna has stressed about the bhakti or the devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of everyone's life. Now, Lord told in the first 6 chapters, Yoginam api sarvesham matgadanantara atma shraddhavan bhajate yomam. And translated, it means of all yogis or transcendentalists, one who always think of me within himself is the best. In the next 6 chapters, pure devotional service and its nature and activities were discussed by the Lord. And in the last 6 chapters, knowledge, renunciation, activities of material nature and transcendental nature and devotional devotional service was described. So what we have to perform in relation to Lord, Supreme Lord, should be represented by the words Om Tat Sat. This is what we were reading in our last reading, discussing it, what Bhagwan told us, that all the activities, when we add the words Om Tat Sat, we are not going to be entangled with the results or the activities in this material world. And they come from the Vedas itself. And also Vedanta Sutra, the Vedas, were described in chapter 15 that devotional service is the objective. This is what the Vedas tell us, and this is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. In the second chapter, it was the summary of the whole subject matter. We can say the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita is like the summary of gist of the Bhagavad Gita, synopsis of the Bhagavad Gita. And Arjun wanted the clarification about the Tyaga and Sannyas in this verse, and he's asking the meaning of these two words. He uses the words Rishikesh and Keshi Nishudana to address Bhagwan. Rishikesh is Krishna. He is the master of all the senses. That is Rishikesh. And Rishikesh, that is the Lord Krishna. He only can help us to get the peace of our mind. So Arjun is asking Bhagwan to summarize everything to him nicely so he can stay steady, he can stay equipoised, he can find his true nature. Actually, he can even transcend beyond his nature, because at the moment Arjun was quite in dilemma. He was very much bewildered, we can say. And when he's having doubts, he is comparing the doubts to the demons. So that's why he is addressing the Lord as Keshi Nishudana also in this verse. Because Lord killed the Keshi demon, so Lord is the only one in this whole cosmos, in this whole creation, who is going to clear the doubts of Arjun. And now to verse 2, Bhagwan says that giving up the activities which are based on the material desires is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, that is the sannyas, and giving up the results of all activities is what the wise called renunciation or the tyaga. So the performance of activities for result has to be given up. We have to give up the results of our activities. This is the instruction of Bhagavad Gita, because by getting attached to the results of our work, we keep ourselves bound with the material entanglement, and we keep coming here back in this or that species of life again and again. Activities leading to the spiritual knowledge are not to be given up, Bhagwan is saying to Arjun, and he's going to clear about this in the next verses. Vedas also tell us lots of sacrifices which can be, or yagyas which can be performed for various purposes, for example, to attain a good son, or to attain to the higher planets. But Bhagwan is saying to Arjun that these all have to stop, that you have to do everything just as your duty without asking for any result. And the sacrifice for the purification of one's own heart or advancement in spiritual science, one should not give up. So the sacrifice of clearing our hearts of the doubts and of rising to the higher platform in life, we don't have to give up that sacrifice. We can say our sacrifice is chanting of the holy names, which we do, whether you're doing 16 rounds, which takes up at least 2 hours, and if you're starting to chant, so however you are trying to do at the moment, that is your real sacrifice, that is your real yajna for the Lord. Because as we have been reminded again and again, that Lord is living in our heart, and when we are saying the chanting, we are actually chanting the mantra, so Lord residing in our heart can hear it, and the contamination which is there in our heart for millions and millions of years can be cleared up from our consciousness as well. Verse 3, Bhagwan is also saying further to Arjun now that some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty, yet other sages maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity and penance should never be abandoned. So all the fruitive activities have to be given up. Uh, for example, the Vedas, they say that one has to kill that animal for some sacrifice, but we should remember that killing of an animal is not that animal is not going to be considered killed if that is done according to Veda, and that sacrifice is going to give a new life to that animal. And sometimes the animal can also be promoted to the higher form of human life. But the sages have various opinions amongst themselves. Prabhupada is telling in the purport, some say that this should be completely avoided, the killing should not be done, and others say sacrifice for a specific that it is good for a specific reason. And all these different opinions on sacrificial activities will be very much cleared by the Lord in the following verses. Verse 4, Bhagwan says, O best of the Bharatas, hear my judgment about the renunciation. O tiger among the men, renunciation is declared in the scriptures to be of the three kinds. So Vedas are the different laws given by the Lord, and Lord is personally present in front of Arjun. And now whatever Lord is saying to Arjun is going to be the final say, or the final word. Lord says that the process of renunciation should be considered in terms of modes of material nature in which they are performed. So whichever mode of nature a particular sacrifice is performed, that should be considered in the process of renunciation or the tyaga. Are you doing that in the mode of goodness, passion, or in ignorance? Verse 5. Bhagwan says, acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. Arjuna is in this verse, Bhagwan uses the word manishinam, which means even for the great souls. So the yogi should perform the acts for performance of the human society. There are many purifying processes which are there for advancing for humans in the spiritual life. That is, there is marriage ceremony. It is one of the yagyas. It's called the Vivaha Yagya. And a sannyasi, when a person when takes a devotee, or a sannyasi who takes a sannyas order of life, they give up all the family relations. And that is a question mark, isn't it? That on one side, marriage ceremony is encouraged, and the other side we are talking about this Vivaha Yagya. So Lord says that any sacrifice which is meant for human welfare should never be given up. Now the marriage ceremony or the Vivaha Yagya is why it is there. It is there to regulate the mind, so it becomes peaceful, so a person can later on peacefully work for the spiritual advancement. For men, it should be encouraged, even for the persons in the renounced order of life. So sannyasis, and so not in the sannyasa order of life, I meant to say, this should be even encouraged by the sannyasis for the common people, that yes, they should get married. The sannyasi should also be encouraging the people to follow the married order of life, so that they can live regulated life, or they can regulate their minds and advance in spiritual devotion. But the sannyasis, they never associate with women. So Charity is done for the purification of the heart. Should be done for the suitable person in a suitable way, and then and in a suitable mindset. Then only it's going to lead to the advanced spiritual life. In verse 6, Bhagwan says, all these activities should be performed without attachment or any expectation of results. They should be performed as a matter of duty. O son of Pritha, this is my final opinion. So all sacrifices are purifying. They will purify, but one should not expect any result by such performances. In other words, all sacrifices which are meant for advancing in this material world, in this material life, should be given up. But the sacrifices which are going to purify our life and are going to raise the bar for us in the spiritual life, are going to advance us in the spiritual life, they should not be stopped. So in other words, anything which leads to Krishna consciousness should be done and should be encouraged. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also explained that activities which lead to the bhakti of Bhagwan should be accepted. This is the highest of all the religions. So a devotee of Lord, they should accept any kind of work, sacrifice or charity which will help them in the discharge of their devotional service to the Lord. So anything which is going to help devotees in the devotional life should be done. But remember, don't get attached to the results of the work. That's why we offer everything to the Lord. Whether it's part of your earning or whether it's the food you're going to eat, you offer it to Bhagwan, and then you have the prasad. And you do help the various activities of the temples as well. Verse 7, prescribed duties should never be renounced. Bhagwan says, if one gives up his prescribed duties because of illusion, such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. So for material satisfaction, one has to give up. That kind of work has to be given up, which is just going to give you material satisfaction. But activities which are going to promote the spiritual side, they have to be done. Cooking for the Lord, offering food for the Lord, to the Lord, accepting the prasad, and sannyasis, they are not recommended that they should not be cooking for themselves. But so that's why they are dependent on the grihasthas. The grihasthas help them out, and the grihasthas help the brahmacharis as well, so that they can do their studies, etc., and preaching. So cooking for oneself is prohibited for sannyasis, but not for cooking for the Lord. So for they can cook for Lord, not for themselves. So remember that. Sannyasi can perform the marriage ceremony of his disciple in the advancement of Krishna consciousness as well. This is from the purport. And now verse 8 says to us that anyone who gives up the prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear or bodily discomfort is said to have renounced in the mode of passion. So in the previous verse, for example, a sannyasi doesn't want to perform the marriage ceremony of his disciple, then it will be in the duty performed in the mode of darkness. And now that renunciation will be in the mode of darkness. But now in verse 8, Bhagwan is saying that anyone who is Krishna conscious, they should not stop earning money out of the fear that, oh, I'm going to be attached to the results of my activities. So if you are earning, but still if you are engaging yourself in Krishna consciousness, you're engaging yourself in the devotional service, you are fine. You're rising up early in the morning, you're doing your sadhana bhakti, and one should not be fearful at all, because if one is not going to be happily doing their varnashram dharma or their the material side of occupation, thinking that, oh, this is going to be troublesome, then that is going to be in the renunciation will be in the mode of passion. You do everything, but you offer it to the Lord first. Om Tat Sat. So the result of the passionate work is always miserable. If a person renounces work in that spirit, he never gets the result of renunciation. Verse 9, Bhagavan says, O Arjun, when one performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done and renounces all material association and all the attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. So your varnashram dharma or the prescribed duty in the life has to be performed. That should be our thinking, and we will be acting without any attachment to the result of our activity, and we will not be associating with the modes of work. And if you are doing your sadhana bhakti, you are a devotee of Lord, then you are not getting entangled with your work or the co-workers there. You are just working for Krishna, and when you are giving the results of your work in that way, in Krishna consciousness, then you are working on a transcendental level. Verse 10, or not on a conditioned level, because when we are getting entangled with the results of our life activities, then we are on a conditioned platform, then we are conditioning ourselves. But when we are giving up the results, and then we are on a transcendental platform. Finally, the verse 10, Bhagavan says, the intelligent renouncers situated in the mode of goodness, neither hateful of inauspicious work nor attached to auspicious work, has no doubts about work. So the person in Krishna consciousness or in the bhakti or in the mode of goodness, he or she does not hate anyone or anything which troubles his or her body. They work in the proper place and at the right time in the right place without worrying for the troublesome or the miseries coming out of their duty. Such a person is in transcendence, and they should be understood to be the most intelligent and beyond all doubts in their activities, because they've realized that they are not this body, they are this soul. The troubles are all because our soul is traveling in this body, so the troubles are of the body, so they are not too much worried about that, and they're just peacefully performing their duty, whatever duty they have in this life. Verses 11 onwards of chapter 18. Wish you all a very Krishna conscious day. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.